Welcome to The Chattel Window, The Human Eye and the Camera Lens, a scholarly podcast examining the intersection of Caribbean architectural heritage, visual culture, comparative religion, anthropology, photographic theory, and theological symbolism. I am your host, Dr. William Anderson Gittins, Doctor of Divinity, broadcasting from Bridgetown, Barbados, and in this series I present an interdisciplinary humanities investigation into the symbolic relationship among the Barbadian chattel window, the human eye, and the camera lens. This podcast episode preludes my 478th forthcoming publication, The Chattel Window, the Human Eye, and the Camera Lens, a comparative analysis through photographic theory, a comparative symbol across various cultures, Gittins 2026. Throughout the series, I deliberately differentiate historical evidence, theoretical interpretation, symbolic comparison, and my own researcher positionality. It is imperative to clarify that this study does not posit these three objects as historically identical nor suggests a direct evolutionary lineage among them. Rather, the focus is on their analogous symbolic functions across diverse cultures, mediating relationships between interior and exterior realms, perception and interpretation, identity and memory, as well as physical and spiritual vision. Segment 1: Scholarly Context. This investigation is firmly grounded within the humanities, diverging from empirical natural sciences methodologies, employing an interdisciplinary qualitative framework. It sensitizes insights from architectural history, anthropology, comparative religion, theological hermeneutics, media studies, visual culture, semiotics, and photographic theory. The conclusions herein arise primarily from comparative interpretive analysis of established scholarship rather than empirical experimentation or archaeological recovery. Central to this thesis is the assertion that the Barbadian chattel window transcends its function as a mere architectural element to become a potent cultural symbol. Its imperative significance can be productively compared to the human eye and the camera lens. Crucially, this argument remains comparative, not casual. It refrains from suggesting identical historical origins, while emphasizing shared symbolic mediations through which cultures articulate perception, protection, acknowledge identity, and communication. This interpretive stance draws upon Clifford Geertz's 1973 conceptualization of culture as a system of inherited symbols through which meaning is constructed. Likewise, Mircea Eliade 1959 comparative religious symbolism underscores how different in kind cultures manifest convergent symbolic patterns absent direct historical transmission. Consequently, the resemblance identified here are understood as examples of convergent symbolic expression rather than assertions of universal equivalence. Segment 2: Architectural Foundations. Within the canon of architectural history, the Barbadian chattel house occupies a distinctive niche as a form of vernacular architecture emblematic of Caribbean post-emancipation realities. These portable timber dwellings materialize in response to a state of existence lacking predictability among formerly enslaved populations who lack legal land ownership, yet resided on plantation estates, to be relocated seamlessly when tenancy arrangements change. Scholarship by Sir Henry Fraser, 1990, Carl Watson, 2003, and Jill Shepard, 1977, elucidates the Chattel House's embodiment of resilience, environmental adaptation, skill craftsmanship, and post-colonial identity affirmation. Notably, the signature Louvier Chattel windows regulate airflow, modulate sunlight, maintain privacy, and facilitate social communication, thereby constituting defining features of Barbadian architectural heritage. These works provide an indispensable historical foundation for interpreting the Chattel window beyond environmental functionality toward symbolic metaphor. Segment 3: Visual Culture and Photographic Theory. Visual representation has long been understood through the metaphor of the window. Leon Battista Alberti's concept of the fenestre aperta, or open window, established the Renaissance model of pictorial representation in which paintings function as transparent views onto an ordered world. Alberti 1435/2011. Although this metaphor profoundly influenced Western artistic practice, later visual theorists challenged assumptions regarding objective vision. John Berger, 1972, argued that seeing precedes language yet remains culturally conditioned. Randolph Arhiman, 1974, demonstrated that perception itself constitutes an active process of visual thinking rather than passive observation. Roland Barthes, 1981, emphasized photography's capacity to preserve moments that simultaneously communicate historical fact and emotional significance. Susan Sontag, 1977, further argued that photography transforms experience into cultural objects that shape memory, identity, and social understanding. Collectively, these theorists establish the conceptual framework through which the human eye, the architectural window, and the camera lens may be interpreted as parallel mechanism of mediation. Segment 4: Theology and Comparative Religion. Religious traditions have consistently employed visual symbolism to explain spiritual realities. Within Christianity, Matthew 6:22-23 describes the eye as, I quote, the lamp of the body, end quote, establishing vision as both a physiological and spiritual metaphor. Ancient Egyptian religion associated the eye of ours with healing, protection, and divine authority, Wilkinson 2003. Within Hindu traditions, the third eye signifies transcendent wisdom and enlightenment, Flood 1996. Eastern Orthodox theology similarly associates divine light with spiritual transformation, Weir 1993. Although these traditions differ historically and doctrinally, they illustrate recurring symbolic associations between vision, knowledge, morality, revelation, and identity. This study therefore examines the symbolism of the eye alongside Caribbean architectural heritage, while avoiding claims of direct historical influence. Segment 5. My research positionality is the awareness of how my viewpoints, interactions, and comprehension of the universe are shaped by my social identities, experiences, and surroundings. Modern qualitative research acknowledges that the researcher's intellectual background influences scholarly interpretation. As a result, The questions raised throughout my inquiry were influenced by my multidisciplinary background as an author, publisher, podcaster, photojournalist, cinematographer, media arts specialist, cultural theorist, and doctor of divinity. These professional experiences inform the comparative framework employed in this study, but do not constitute evidence supporting its conclusions. Instead, they represent a reflective standpoint that acknowledges how disciplinary perspectives influence scholarly inquiry. My engagement with biblical hermeneutics encouraged exploration of the symbolic significance of vision. My professional work in photography and cinematography, I usually emphasize framing perspective, composition, and visual communication. As per media studies, I usually reinforced an appreciation for symbolic representation across cultural contexts. In the scheme of things, collectively, these perspectives inspired the interdisciplinary questions that underpin this research while remaining grounded in established scholarship across architecture, anthropology, comparative religion, and visual studies. Closing remarks. I have laid the academic groundwork for this multidisciplinary inquiry in today's episode and addressed the study's main theoretical inspirations, made a distinction between interpretive analysis and empirical data, placed it within the context of current humanities scholarship, and considered my positionality as a researcher. In our next episode, we will examine the historical development of Barbadian chattel houses and chattel windows through the lenses. In our next episode, we will examine the historical development of Barbadian chattel houses and chattel windows through the lenses of architectural history, anthropology, archaeology, and post-colonial studies, exploring how these vernacular structures became enduring symbols of resilience, identity, and cultural memory. Thank you for joining me. I am Dr. William Anderson Gittins, Doctor of Divinity. Until next time, thank you for listening. God bless.